Thanks, Tanya. The time is 7:20. Musicians have the right to an equal split with the record company for royalties payable when their music is played on the radio or in public. That has been the law for the last 20 years. But how many performers know their rights, and how robust is the industry in ensuring they get paid? This programme has heard the story of one British musician whose widow has only just been told she'll be paid for his part on Michael Jackson's Billie Jean 3 decades after it was released. Tom Bateman reports.
In 1982, Michael Jackson had written Billie Jean and was about to start recording it for the album Thriller.
More kicking stuff in the phones, I need it. More bottom and kick in the phones.
The producer Quincy Jones hired a string section that was world class. On the sessions, the British violinist, principal second for the London Symphony Orchestra, Reginald Hill.
He was a fabulous violinist. He was obviously very well respected. Just before 1980, he moved to LA just to do recording work.
Reginald Hill died in 1992, a musician whose passion lay with classical and jazz, who rarely spoke about his commercial recording work. His widow Elizabeth says it would be another 20 years before she realised he'd received no credit in the UK for many recordings he was on regularly being broadcast in Britain. And for 2 decades now, the law has provided session musicians with a right to royalties from broadcasts, money collected by the organisation Ppl.
It first came to my attention, I guess, when Michael Jackson died. I realised they're going to be playing this stuff a lot. I know Reg did a lot. Initially, I had not been aware that he should be paid for the work in England that he had done here. When I realised that, I contacted Ppl with a whole bunch of paperwork which I copied of invoices for reused payments and so on. They rejected it.
How did it make you feel during all of this?
Oh, less than a human being. Ppl seemed to be working against us. I'm just one person. There must be thousands and thousands of widows, families, even musicians themselves who have no idea that they should be claiming things and they're not helped.
Mrs. Hill says she made Ppl aware of her husband's part on Billie Jean 3 years ago. Ppl says the claim wasn't made on its system until December 2014. The case, though, appeared to challenge an organisation trying to work in the interests of both record labels and musicians. In an extraordinary turn of events, Mrs. Hill supplied Ppl with her husband's original recording contract for the Billie Jean session, but was told it wasn't sufficient evidence he was on the track. Then, last month, a resolution of sorts. Ppl accepted Mr. Hill was on the lineup, although the level of payment and going back how far is not clear.
My name's Tom Bateman from the BBC. I'm here for Peter Leatham.
Peter Leatham, CEO of Ppl. One of the problems we had in relation to that particular claim was there was conflicting evidence. There was a range of performances that took place for Billie Jean, and the record company were a bit concerned that they weren't sure that Mr. Hill was on the final mix. So we had to go and do quite a bit of work with a range of different sources to try and give ourselves confidence this was the actual correct position given the conflicting evidence.
But I mean, one of the things she says is that, look, you know, she had to seek out the recording contract, which clearly shows her late husband was on that recording session. He was paid for it. I mean, he was a renowned violinist who played for the London Symphony Orchestra. It seemed daft, really, that they'd have recorded him and not used him on the track. I mean, you can hear the strings on the track. I mean, it felt to her like this was pushed back because it would have meant a payout.
No, because as I say, we're a not-for-profit organisation. We have no interest in holding on to the money. We just want to actually have the money paid out. And as I say, that just took us time to resolve. At the same time, the record company actually identified 54 recordings that Mr. Hill was on with people like Earth, Wind and Fire, Julio Iglesias, which we didn't actually previously know. So we were able to add Mr. Hill to those particular recordings and pay the money out at the end of last year for those.
For some, all this signifies a wider malaise in music. Performers armed with laptops have tried to open up the back of their industry and reveal the old clockwork. David Knopfler founded Dire Straits with his brother Mark. He never quite knew if the companies were registering you for credits, he says.
In those days it was very patchy, back in the 70s and 80s. I'm saying, you know, the larger the organisation, the more likely it is that there will be an audit trail. But the opportunities for not doing an audit trail are rich and varied, you know, and the artists themselves are usually just grateful for, if they're a young artist starting out on their careers, they're grateful for the publicity rather than the payment,
PPL says it is the best in the world at what it does, and certainly its corporate skills are beyond dispute, now collecting more than £190 million a year. Its barristers are in court on virtually a daily basis. It has become something of a legal battleship in a British industry often under attack from pirates or freeloaders. Its moral authority must come from carrying musicians. PPL says it paid out to more than 63,000 last year. Reginald Hill is now added to that list. For his widow, though, it feels rather late.
When Reg died, I was really in desperate straits, and it's been a struggle, and I'm still amazed that I've come as far as I have. I always say God's got a different accounting book than I've got, because when I do the figures, they just don't add up. And this would have made a world of difference.
Tom Bateman reporting there. It's now 26 minutes past 7.